Hey everyone, this is Louis7, and I know it may not seem like it right now, but I'm still technically on my break, but I was able to make this video, and for this one I wanted to talk about Update 27 in the Lord of the Rings Online. From what I have seen, this is one of the most successful updates the game has ever had, and more than any update I have covered before, Standing Stone Games has been promoting the update on Twitter, and there has been very little negative feedback that I have seen. They even promoted, it seems like, more than Mordor and some of the expansions, Minas Morgul, the other recent one. But all of this may seem odd considering the update hardly added any in-game content, and there isn't any new group content or raids or even mobs to fight, which is really crazy for an MMORPG where that is a huge core of the game. So this update was very different than anything we have ever seen before, and by all accounts seems like it is one of the best parts of the game. And in this video I want to talk about why I think that is, and how we in Standing Stone Games, the developers of LOTRO, can learn from this update for a better future and new content for the game. Now, the update has been out for a while, but I think it is still important to talk about, and this is really the only way it works out for me with my schedule right now. And just so people do know ahead of time, there are many spoilers in this for Volume 5 and the festival in general, but as I said, it has been out for a while, so at least hopefully anybody really worrying about spoilers has already finished it. But to get started, I was surprised at how enjoyable the Midsummer Festival and the new story with the Great Wedding, which started Volume 5, and how enjoyable all that was for me. Especially because the festivals and book quests both weren't usually my favorite things in LOTRO, especially some book quests I just haven't enjoyed. But this update had a lot to overcome for me personally to really consider it a fun patch. And I also hardly actually had anything that I disliked from it, which is also odd for me because usually I have a lot of smaller details to pick on and in more typical updates, even if I like zones and their quests, some of them do bother me, but there really actually wasn't anything like that with Update 27 and the Great Wedding. So that was really nice for me going through it. The last thing that I want to mention is that even though I think there are some things from this update that can be applied to future updates, a lot of it did actually seem really unique and fitting for the specific event, which I think really speaks to how well Standing Stone Games did with the quality of the update, considering it was something brand new for LOTRO that we haven't seen anything like that before. It was just super unique. But moving on, one of the things I liked most about the update was that characters of basically any level could join and do the new content. I felt like this allowed it to be more inclusive of different players, and for myself it was exciting to be able to go on the legendary server Anor. And on that note, I just liked that I could go there on my low-level characters and do the latest content of the game without having to worry about levels, gear, class traits, and all that sort of stuff. It was just a nice change of pace, really. And having it available at lower level for lower level players also allowed us to get all the nice rewards from the book quest, which was nice. And it's more typical that new content and in-game content is locked to the highest level characters. So as I mentioned, getting all that new stuff on even a basically fresh character was really nice. And I will say it is typical that basically any level character can do festival quests, but I think having the Midsummer Festival align with the book quest and being able to do it all at any level was also nice. So having a character of any level be able to participate in the new content was a great thing, and to go with the title of the video, I guess one of the lessons I thought of from this update was for future content to be more inclusive of different character levels. So a funny thing with that is there was an interview with the executive producer of LOTRO a little while ago, shortly after the update, where he mentioned in the future they wanted to continue the ability for level characters to experience some of the update. Specifically, they mentioned a new feature called missions. Now, I have no idea how these missions could work or will work, so they could be like instances or skirmishes or even like just festivals, how those work. But yeah, I just want to say I'm all for them making future content more inclusive of different level characters. One thing I also think they could do is make maybe instances available to lower level characters. They have done that with some updates, but it would really have to make sense maybe story-wise though. But I do think it could be fun if new instances are available at lower levels to have more variety and more options. And it just allows more characters and more players to do the content if they aren't all the way level up. And the final thing I have to say here is that they do need to be cautious to not overwhelm new players. That is one thing I worry about with any game that I'm starting off is how overwhelming things like that might be. So just like with low-level characters in general, if they have a bunch of things that may seem important but actually aren't, or there are just so many things spread out and some ultimately are important and some aren't, it may actually become too much of a mess and too confusing, especially for new players. So like an example is the Great Wedding actually has a clash trait point tied to it, so it basically is really important to go through, but there are a lot of things in LOTRO that aren't important that might seem like they are important, like the Great Wedding, which is for the clash trait point, but we'll talk about that later. But I'm otherwise happy to have more content for my low-level characters, even as a long-time LOTRO player. Just having variety of things I can do is really nice as a long-time player again. To move on, the next thing that I really liked was all the little details. Now, I will say LOTRO has done a great job with detailing little things on the side for a while, but I really thought that this update took it to a new level. If anyone has followed my Twitter, you probably saw it full of random things that kept distracting me from the actual content of the update that I really enjoyed. So I think the lesson I have here would maybe be that detail on side things, and even I think this could be extended to side quests that are kind of away from the main storyline, are actually really important to at least my game experience. So on the side quest note, this actually makes me think of how much I more usually enjoy side quests, how they have largely felt like a thing of the past in more modern day LOTRO. And it seems like most new zones don't have the old style side quests and side stories where they really had no impact on your actual progression of the zone or story at large. And I think having the update specifically running with the festival at the same time really made me think in the future having that style of side questing that earlier zones of LOTRO have would be really fun to get back to with new content and newer updates. And I at least know that that would make me more excited for new updates and zones. Continuing on, I think the next lesson for LOTRO's future updates would be to continue with shorter, more straightforward book quests, because another thing that I really liked from the update was that you could just do the book quests and even ignore everything else. You could experience the full story and honestly get done with it pretty quick. My first go through it hardly took a couple hours, and even on some of my alts it's pretty short, and especially I am an altaholic where this quest, as I mentioned, will become necessary for the clash trait point reward, and that's just going to make it feel a lot less grindy overall. So I'll touch on the trait point again at the end of this video, but that's actually the only kind of negative thing with update 27. But it was, as far as that goes, much better than anything else in the game because it was short and didn't feel grindy for something like that. So going back to the story, it didn't actually require me to go through all of the quests of the zone, which, if I remember correctly, has actually been the dominant questing style since around Rise of Isengard, so for a really long time. But I just thought that was a nice break again from that typical style of questing and book quests we've had in the game for a while. So in the future I would definitely love to see more book quest series like this, especially if they are incorporated into normal zones and updates where we, have a new zone and kill mobs and things like that. But the final lesson I have for LOTRO from update 27 is to have more festivals in newer areas. I and many people I play with thought it was fun to have festivals in a new area outside of the usual Bree, Shire, Era of the Wind kind of trio of areas. And especially my kin leader was really for this idea, I know. But I think in the future it would be a lot of fun if new festivals or even additions to existing festivals were centered in areas like Dale, even some Rohan areas, and any of the newer areas near the Grey Mountains, and soon we're going to Gundabad, I know, and places like the Bjarning Lands, or just really any newer area that we go through quests for the story, but then we kind of leave them behind and never visit again. So I think just having reasons with festivals to visit those would be really neat. And for lower level players who never get to explore these areas, or in the very distant future get to, like Dale, as I mentioned, I know is a popular area, but you don't really get to visit it for a long time in the game. And just having kind of the access to the areas through festivals and events like this, I think would be really good for the future of LOTRO. Alright, so that is actually it for the lessons I had for this video. To quickly summarize, going forward, I would like to see new updates and content be more inclusive of character levels, And I would love to see similar flow of the story and book quests, and finally some increased detail and emphasis on side quests would be really nice as well. And the last thing for the future I hope is they do continue to make festivals in all the newer areas that are passed through and basically nearly forgotten after that. As we make our way towards the end of this video, I thought it would be fun to actually switch to some lessons that I have learned from the update. So as I mentioned early on, I wasn't actually excited about the update in the wedding, but I wasn't really unexcited either. I was just skeptical that I was going to enjoy it in the first place, and all the festivities and content with Midsummer, and then even having the Clash trait point tied to the book quest again seemed like a bad idea to me. So for me, I did learn that book quests and story-driven content without any mob killing can actually be fun in LOTRO, so that was a big surprise to me, but this update alone made me more interested in other story-driven parts of LOTRO, which I know there is a whole lot of. And I also learned the lesson that Minas Tirith is not really that bad, and I probably criticize it way too much and think too poorly of it. It is actually a neat structural city, even if it does have its flaws and brings a whole lot of lag. That was one of the reasons I stayed as far away from it as I could in the past. But the final thing I really learned is that festivals themselves can be fun, especially if they are in areas I don't visit much in, like with Minas Tirith that promoted me to explore that city that I didn't really like too much before, and that's one of the things I do hope they keep implementing in the future. And really before this festival, the only one I really enjoyed was parts of the summer one, but the one I enjoyed was the winter festival. I think Frostbluff, that one was pretty fun. Anyway, to move on to the last thing for this video, which is the Clash trait point topic. In the future, when I do make my full return to YouTube, I will have a full video on this, but I believe the whole Clash trait point system isn't that good for most players. So one of the biggest issues I have with the system is you have to do a lot of the story content, and honestly nowadays a lot of irrelevant content to get your trait points, which I think are a core piece of your character's progression. And for this video, I'll just leave it that I am not a fan of that entire system, and having a new trait point with update 27 book quest was honestly a letdown for me. But looking on the good side, the book quests were super short, and as I mentioned earlier, for this specific update, getting the trait point wasn't actually that bad or time consuming. So even if the system as a whole frustrates me, the update 27 addition to it specifically wasn't too bad to me, even with me playing a ton of alts. So yeah, that was really the only kind of negative thing from the update that I did want to touch on and also give feedback on, but I will leave that there and hope you all enjoyed the lessons I have for the things from the update that LOTRO should keep implementing in the future. And I hope you all enjoyed hearing my perspective before and after running through the new content, which I did really enjoy, and it seems like a very successful update for LOTRO, so I hope they continue the success and continue making great content. But if you did enjoy this video, please consider liking and subscribing for more when I do eventually fully return to YouTube, and thanks for watching everyone.